Okay, so this has been recorded around 6:30 minutes or so before the US Open on Wednesday, the 30th of July. We've got FOMC today, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, press conference 30 minutes later. And then this evening, after the close, we have earnings reports from both Meta and Microsoft. So we could be in for some volatility today. What I wanted to do was take a quick look at both Meta and Microsoft's charts and where we are in what we might expect from earnings. So this is the weekly chart of Meta, and going back to the all-time low, we've got 5 up off that low, 2 back, giving us a 1, 2. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 into the high that we saw here in 2021. That hit a 138.2 fib for a wave 3 potentially. ABC, deep wave 4. And it looks to me like we're getting an extended wave 5 on what is likely then to complete a full 5-wave structure off the all-time low. And then we're going to obviously see something more serious to the downside. But at the moment, this chart looks to me like it's got further upside. If you look at the weekly tools, the CRSI buy signal coming off that low in the wave 4, that was back in October 2022. And that's more or less kept you in this most of the time. If you add the Mansfield, it's pretty much been in a safe to own zone. Then if you drop down to the daily time frame, obviously you can pick out some of the interim moves. But in this 5th wave, I've got a 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4 little pullback we saw earlier this year. And I think we're in the 5th wave up of this wave 3. And then we get another 4, 5 later to complete the process. So the obvious target above is the 2.0 extension. That's the dark blue fibs here for this fractal here. Now, I would then expect to see one of two things: a pullback to at least 514 to 456, and then possibly another move up. But there's another possibility here, which is I can be off a degree. 1, 2, 1, 2, and all of this was this 3 here. This was a 4 of 1 degree lower. And if you look at the green fibs, bear in mind everything's color coded. So primary degree in green, primary degree fibs, interim fractal in dark blue and bracketed, and therefore the fibs there. So we're coming up to a 2.0 extension. This could be this wave 3 here, in which case we are going to see a deeper pullback towards 211 to 294. But in the short term, I would still expect to see higher here. Now, I'll come down the time frame shortly, but if we add the cycles in, you can see that the weekly cycles have turned. And that would be more indicative to my mind that we're going to see a wave 4 of a degree higher in the next pullback than the one I'm showing. So either way, the analysis in the short term remains the same: higher before we then see a move down. Just before we go down to the excuse me, lower time frames, if we look at the relative rotation, Meta is part of the communications ETF, so XLC is one of the core ETFs, and you can see there's Meta there. It's still in the leading quadrant on a weekly basis, so it's come all the way from lagging and started to push right up. But in the last 2 weeks, this has turned down, so it's starting to push towards the weakening on the weekly time frame, and therefore that's a little bit of a warning here. It tells you that this move up is fading, and if we look at the CRSI on the weekly chart, that's also starting to roll over. Now on the daily chart, and let's just zoom this out slightly so that we can just look at the excuse me, current part of the move. So the first thing to note is, we got that pullback off the high in February into the April low, in common with most of the market. And again, there's the squeeze coming off the low. There's the CRSI buy signal. There's the trender. There's the plethora of excuse me, wave cycle trader tools all firing long, telling you to expect higher. And at the moment, I would suggest that we are likely to push up one more level, and if we're going to do that, it can go all the way to 845. What we need to see this do is hold this evening above 678. If we were to take that out, that would be a warning sign that potentially we're going to pull back sooner rather than later. But and that would have other connotations, by the way. But I would think we're going to hold and push up, and that the next level up is going to be up at 845 in Meta, after which I'd look for more for a pullback. We've got a daily squeeze. Momentum's gone slightly negative, but not enough to suggest a move either way yet. Watch that daily squeeze. You know, that's price compression, as you know. This is a consolidation up near the highs. I'm looking for it to break out one more time and give a final run up before we get a larger degree pullback in Meta. Now, if we come over and look at Microsoft, let's go. I'm just going to take Microsoft out to a monthly chart. And it's one of the more unusual looking charts on a larger time frame. If we go all the way back into the 80s when this IPO'd, and we got this move up, that counts best as an ABC, which puts Microsoft in one huge diagonal structure. What was interesting about this stock is when many other of the major tech and sort of .com based startup type stocks, if you like, lost 80 or 90% of their value into that low in 2009, Microsoft held up much, much better. And I think that was a wave two. All of this move, we're seeing it's a 5-wave structure, looks impulsive off this low here back in 2009, looks to be an A wave of a wave 3. And when that completes, we will retrace against the entire rise off the 2009 low before we see any further upside. Having said that, I think we've got 2 more highs to go in this stock. The rest of the wave 3 in the diagonal structure for this 5th, and then a 4-5. So final target's going to be up around the 1210 area in Microsoft before we see a bigger degree pullback. If I bring it down to the weekly chart, and you know, there's the 3-4, and I suspect this is one diagonal off this low back in 2019 for an ABC 1, 2, and this is an A of 3, B of 3, and we're now in the C of 3. That should push up to a minimum of 571, more likely 720 before we see that done. And if I just take you down to the daily chart, now this is where it gets awkward. But past the last earnings report, we had a huge gap up. Structurally, therefore, it's very difficult to place the 1, 2 and whether this what this is. But you can see this wedge pattern forming. I'm looking for it to break to the downside and give us a pullback in a wave 2 in Microsoft. Now that has commonality with the rest of what we're expecting in stock markets, but from a technical point of view, you know, coming off this low in April, we got the CRSI, the Mansfield, the Trender, the Mansfield, the whole gamut of long signals, and we haven't had a sell signal. We've got huge divergence on the momentum signature. Trend is starting to come off, but the CRSI is still embedded above the dynamic upper band. So until we break some support, to key support in Microsoft, 501, and then below there, 489. Providing it remains above those two, then we can still push a touch higher in this wave 1. Take those out, and it would indicate very clearly that we're in the wave 2 back. Cycles, this is the daily cycle. It's saying, look, we've topped out, we should be expecting a pullback. Guess what? Into around early October. Seasonality, that fits well. It fits with the cycles we're looking at in the NASDAQ and in the S&P 500. But, you know, cycles are the setup and the indication of when to be cautious, when to go long, etc. But they are not the signal. We need the signals before we would trade this to the downside. If you want to do that at all, you know, you can just add it to the watch list of stocks that we've got to play the next level up. Again, if we come over and look at the sector rotation, so Microsoft is part of XLK. If we look at it relative to the SPY here, this is on a weekly basis. You can see again it's been in the leading, but it's starting to fade now and head down towards the weakening sector. If I look at it, before I go to daily, if I just do it against its compatriots. So this is relative to the XLK other stocks themselves. So you can see the ones that you should be looking at the moment: AMD, Nvidia, Oracle, and guess what? Broadcom. And that Nancy Pelosi knows something, doesn't she, having gone long with options very, very recently. But Microsoft has been coming off. So there are signs that we should be expecting a pullback imminently in Microsoft, which is also what our Elliott wave count is suggesting. But I do think it will be corrective. I think there's a lot more upside in Microsoft ultimately. If we take this down to a daily time frame here on the relative rotation, and then where are we? Microsoft. So you can see here, it was starting to be improving and it's come back straight back down into lagging on the daily. So it's not looking particularly healthy relative to its peers within its group at this point in time. So let's see what we do get on earnings. There is something of a crapshoot. If you've been long either of these two stocks off anywhere near the April lows, personally, I'd suggest that you either ought to be hedged overall at this point in time, or you want to be banking that money into strength, sit the earnings out, and then wait for pullbacks. You might miss the last little squiggle, but you don't really want the crapshoot of earnings and a risk up at these levels with the analysis that I've just provided.